It is late Friday, July 27th, and as we take our 28storms.com tour of the tropics, we see that there is a tropical wave in the central Atlantic, and this continues to be the focus of our attention. And on the latest enhanced infrared, you can see that there is a small pulse of convection near the mid-level circulation. There is still nothing well defined at the surface, but you still need to watch these flare-ups because they can and do sometimes lower those surface pressures, and that can help to initiate tropical cyclone formation. However, we're still not expecting anything imminent in terms of development, and that is because of all of this dry air, and a lot of this is Saharan air layer conditions working its way out across into the deep tropics, and this is still highly detrimental to any tropical organization. This is the latest graphic from the University of Wisconsin, and the yellow and orange colors help to denote the latest Saharan air layer outbreaks, and you can see that some of the Saharan air is working its way into the tropical wave axis, and this is what we've been talking about for the past week. The vertical wind shear really isn't all that hostile. In fact, it's rather favorable, but until this tropical wave can move out and ahead of the Saharan air layer, no development is going to occur. The latest wind shear analysis shows that we have favorable upper-level ridging across much of the main development region between the Lesser Antilles and the coast of Africa, but as the wave axis begins to move out of the dry air and more so into the Greater Antilles and Southwest Bahamas, the westerly winds are going to become more of an issue. As you can see, those wind shear values do begin to increase to an excess of 30 to 40 knots out toward the west. The combination of dry air in the short term and vertical wind shear in the extended range are the two reasons why the models are not overly bullish in developing this tropical wave into a cyclone. But as we see, based on the latest 12Z run from the ECMWF, as we go into Tuesday, the tropical wave is expected to be passing over San Juan, Puerto Rico. And finally, once we get into Wednesday and Thursday, it's starting to move off into the southern Bahamas. Also, as we get later on into next week, we could also be paying more attention to the eastern Pacific because the European model is developing the next tropical depression or tropical storm relatively close to the Mexican Riviera. This coincides fairly well with the forecast timing of the Madden-Julian oscillation. As of right now, the active and favorable pulse of the MJO is still centered over Southeast Asia, but it is starting to work itself into the equatorial Pacific, and in another week's worth of time, it should be moving out into the eastern Pacific to the south of Mexico, so that does add some credibility to the latest ECMWF forecast. Also, thereafter, the favorable pulse should be moving into the Atlantic Basin, so even if this tropical wave out there in the central Atlantic right now doesn't develop, we can definitely anticipate more in the way of tropical activity as we start the month of August. So as we make our return to the forecast model guidance with the GFS model, we see our central Atlantic wave is forecast to move westward over the next 7 days and finally end up over Cuba, while we have a potentially much more stronger wave axis exiting the coast of Africa, and this is the first GFS run in which it actually develops a tropical cyclone out here in the main development region. So this is just another indicator that the tropics are soon going to come alive here over the next 1 to 2 weeks. Finally, this is the latest 6-day forecast from the Canadian model, and it is not developing the first tropical wave, but as we saw with the GFS, it looks as though it's also beginning to pick up on the second feature that is going to stem off the coast of Africa, and by day 6 we could be dealing with an organizing tropical disturbance or possibly even a tropical depression. So keep it tuned to 28storms.com throughout the course of the weekend, as we will be providing more video analysis of the tropics, including the Atlantic and Eastern Pacific, and we will still go into a lot more in-depth analysis with this wave as it approaches the Lesser Antilles and any other disturbances that may soon be on the horizon.